Last night at Madison Square Garden was a rough one. Trae Young came in and had another, I don't want to say strong performance, but his third quarter was fantastic against the Knicks. 12 points, 5 assists in that third quarter when the Hawks really took over in the NBA Cup quarterfinals. Hawks going to Vegas, facing the Bucks Saturday. Knicks losing, going to Orlando to face a banged-up Magic team on Sunday. Chris, I want to start with you. Your general thoughts on what went wrong there for New York.
Well, there was a lot. I think, I remember looking at the scoreboard when it was actually working at the Garden last night. It was out to start the game. And at one point, I remember, I think around half, the Knicks were shooting something like 53%. The Hawks were at 36. And either at the beginning of the fourth or midway through the fourth, that had not flipped, but the Hawks had a better shooting percentage for the game than the Knicks did, which tells you how much better the Hawks were playing in that third quarter. They kind of really dug in, sat down, and defended, I think, and that made a big, big difference. The Knicks were just getting so many easy baskets, making an extra pass, and finding the Hawks out of position. And in the third, the Hawks got a couple stops. You saw the Knicks really struggle to get quick shots, which has been a big key for their offense this year, just in getting quicker looks with all the spacing and Towns and everything. And the Hawks were making them work the clock. I think they had three 24-second violations, and you could kind of see the frustration building there. And on the flip side, the Hawks being able to get stops helped them to get out in transition. And, they're a team that in the half court can struggle a little bit, but it's a young group that has fresh legs for the most part. Trae Young is a fantastic passer, especially if he's in transition situations, and they got a lot of those in the third. And then in the fourth, I kind of made the comparison toward the end of the game once the Knicks fell behind. It almost felt like they pulled their goalie, so to speak, where the Hawks got, I think, 5 alley-oops in the last 6.5 minutes of the game. Trae Young assisted 3 of those, but the Knicks' backline defense was pretty awful just as they decided to start blitzing Trae. It was pretty clear that's what they were doing, and they weren't disguising enough about their covers. They were just very boldly saying, we're going to come after Trae. And it's like, okay, you can do that with 2 people, but you're leaving somebody wide open. And it didn't seem like there was enough either thought put into that, or it was just such desperation at that point that the Hawks were getting way too many easy baskets at a time that the Knicks needed to play catch up. So, and obviously, how can I not mention that the offensive rebounding that the Hawks had in the second half? The Knicks were just nowhere to be found on the glass, and one of the worst defensive rebounding showings I've seen from them in a while. It was just not good enough to win a game that actually means something from the standpoint of the in-season tournament.
You nailed it all, Chris, and just a disappointing night for the home team. And Trae Young again in there and putting on a little bit of an extracurricular show with the dice rolling half court. Anthony, to you, Trae Young and the Knicks, is this a rivalry or what is it?
I mean, it's definitely become a little bit of a rivalry, and Trae Young has taken on the villain role. And to be honest, I kind of blame the fans that don't stop chanting with the F Trae Young chants, whether it's at the Garden or leaving a Yankees or a Mets game over the summer. And Trae Young has, bought into it. And he has a really solid game last night. And like you said, end of the game, he does the dice rolling twice. The Knicks players just stood there. Now, should the Knicks players gone and fought Trae Young? No, that's not necessary. But just standing there was a little disappointing. But also it was disappointing that Trae Young came into Madison Square Garden and not just won a game, but won a big game for the in-season tournament. Some fans love it, some fans don't, but the bottom line is it was a big game last night at the world's most famous arena. Trae Young came in, had a huge third quarter, and left the Knicks and their fans sad again.
Yes, he certainly did. And one interesting theme, Chris, that I heard after the game, and I also heard it from the Knicks after their previous home loss. And so it's kind of become a common theme here where they say, they were not hitting shots on offense, and then they kind of let their defense sag a little bit, their energy on defense sag a little bit. To me, I give them credit for being candid, but that's something that you have to clean up. I'm just wondering, you've watched this team a lot. Obviously, they haven't found consistency yet. Where do you think this group can ultimately be? Do you think it can ultimately get there as well?
If I had to take one thing away from, I mean, we're about a third of the way through this season for most teams. I think if they can find a better blend between the team that they have become this season, which, it's not easy when you move in two new key pieces in your offense to be the number one ranked offense in the league. To do that this quickly, we can remember the first 2 weeks of the season, kind of the lack of synergy between Brunson and Towns getting 8 shots in a game. And then to try to fix that, Towns getting a bunch of shots, and he's been on ever since then. But Brunson's struggling for several games, just trying to kind of figure out when to pick his spots and when to call his own number versus when to look for Towns. How does that impact Bridges and the sorts of shots he's taking? Despite all that, they are the number one offense, but they are coached by Tom Thibodeau. And Tom Thibodeau only knows how to coach one way, which is to really get after it defensively, to be physically imposing defensively, to be a really good rebounding team. And they have had moments where they aren't that. Last night, we saw the rebounding be an issue. We saw the defense become an issue in the second half. And, even as they've improved and they are no longer the 21st ranked defense or whatever, Towns is improving a little bit game by game as a rim protector. They still are not stout enough on that end of the floor. And I can't really recall a time earlier in Thibodeau's tenure where you would hear the Knicks saying, we're letting the way we're shooting dictate the way we play defense. When they had Elfrid Payton, if you were letting the shooting dictate the way you play defense, you were going to be playing terrible defense. So, from that standpoint, they have enough guys on this team that are defense focused, that's their calling card. That should not ever be the case. And I think it's risky if that's actually their candor and the truth, they're playing a different style of ball where they are more reliant on jump shots. They're more reliant on spacing. You can't let that dictate your defense and how hard you're going to play defense, because you're going to have offense. That's just the way it works. Even if you're the Celtics, you're going to have off nights. You still have to sit down and defend. So, again, like you said, credit to them for being candid, but I do wonder if there's a little bit more to it than that. And if there are structural problems, which it seems like there are. They got beat pretty bad when they tried to play their two big lineups last night to try to help the rebounding stuff. Towns still had foul trouble, which is an issue. And I can't help but wonder kind of when Mitchell Robinson will be back. I know Shams had a report, I think even yesterday, about that. But, for people that were hoping that Precious would really help by playing alongside Towns, there have been at least times where that's not really appearing to help a whole lot. If anything, it actually might hurt just because if Towns still has fouls, that then you have to dig in and kind of go three deep as far as your centers instead of just two.
Anthony, where are you at this point with this team? And obviously the identity is not the same as it was last year. Is that a problem for you? What do you think about the club right now?
No, the identity definitely isn't the same. And you bring up Precious Achiuwa. He should really petition the league to see if he can play in some sticky gloves, because those Butterfingers, man, he dropped so many balls last night. That was so stressful to watch. It's crazy because the offense has been awesome at times. Number one ranked offense in the league. Some nights it feels like we're putting up almost 200 points. But you look at the offense last night, like Chris talked about, so many times relying on threes. And in the NBA, so many teams do that. But relying on three, unless you're Steph Curry, you're always going to miss threes. You might get hot sometimes, like the Pistons did on Saturday night at the Garden, and the Knicks lost then as well. Also, the defense is not the same. No Isaiah Hartenstein. Mitchell Robinson hasn't played yet. And as great as Karl Anthony Towns has been on offense, he's not clogging the middle like those two guys did. So the defense has to get picked up. The rebound has to get picked up. And like Ian, you said, we have the personnel to play good defense. Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby. They got the nickname Wingstop before the season even started. And we're really not guarding anybody, and that's really surprising. And also, like Chris said as well, in the Elfrid Payton squad, if we looked at what we did on offense and to how the team played defense, that team would have been 0 whatever. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So the team doesn't feel at times they're always getting after it defensively.